Okay, we're in the middle of a sugya. We had just talked about the Isser, which is we all know about, that you're not allowed to retain in your house a a measure or a weight that is not standardized. That's all from the correct standard. Tanya Nami. So we're 4 lines from the bottom on Pei Tesamid base. Tanya Nami. Hachi. There's a Bryce that also says like this. L'yisha Adam mida chasera yisera b'teich beisei. Person can't keep a measure that's missing or extra in his house. Even if it's used as a urinal, so it's not going to be used to measure food or anything else, but just because of the possibility, you might wash it off, you're not allowed to do so. Okay, that's really the end of that. Now we're going, the Bryce is going to pivot to another point. What are the standardized measures that a person can use? Saw, he could have a saw or a tarkiv. A saw has 6 kavim in it. A tarkiv is 3 kavim. And that's really the most important measure that we're going to need to keep in mind for this cheshbon. So a tarkiv is 3 kavim, which is half a saw. The chatzi tarkiv, half of a tarkiv. So that's going to be 1.5 kavim. The kav is a single kav. The chatzi kav of a half a kav. The roiva and a quarter of a kav. The taimin and an eighth of a kav. The chatzi taimin, a half of a half kav, which is, a half of an eighth of a kav, which is a 16th of a kav. The ochla and an ochla. And the Bryce continues with kami ochla. Echad michamisha berevya. 1/5 of a quarter kav. So that's 1/20th of a kav. Okay, so it's just progressively smaller sized measures. Those are measures of dry, when you measure dry things. And the midah, when you're measuring liquid measurements, a hin, v'chatzi hin, and a half hin, v'shlish hin, and a third of a hin, or a vias a hin, and a quarter of an hin, the lug, and a lug. So the lug, v'chatzi lug, or vias, or shminis. Then we go into lugin, which are, so a hin has 12 lugin in it. So we got to a quarter of a hin, which is 3 lugin. Then we switch from the hin, from percentage of hin, to lugin. So then we go to a lug, a chatzi lug, or vias ushminis, a quarter and an eighth of a lug. The echad mishmaina b'shminis, and 1/8 of an eighth of a lug, which is a 64th. V'zeu kurtiv, that's a very small amount called a kurtiv. We're on Tzadi Amid Aleph, 5 lines from the top. Okay, it's really, this is not, I know it sounds very complex, but it's really not. We're really just talking about 2 measures for both dry measures and liquid measures. In the dry measures, we talk about a saw and a kav. A kav is there are 6 kavim in a saw, and by the liquid, we talk about a hin and a lug is a 1/12 of a hin. And then we talk about the percentages of a saw, percentages of a kav, percentages of a hin, and percentages, or I should say fractions of a kav and a saw, and fractions of a lug and a hin. So that's the Gemara. Nami kabayim. In our first list, when we're talking about the dry measures, we gave saw tarkiv. We went straight from a saw, which is 6 kavim, to a tarkiv, which is 3 kavim. Then we went the chatzi tarkiv, which is 1.5 kavim, and the kav. Then we went to a kav. Well, the Gemara is asking, we skipped l'chayr. Why don't we have a measure of 2 kavim? Why did we skip straight from 3 kavim, a tarkiv, which is 3 kavim, to to 1 kav? Why not have a measure of 2 kavim? So Gemara asi lichlufi b'tarkav. The problem is that the tarkav is 3, and they're too close together. You can have one that's 3 kavim and one that's 2 kavim. They're very close, so they could come to get mixed up. So Gemara amato inshi tilsa. If that's the case, we see that a person can make a mistake on something that's a third, right? If a third of 3 is 1, so if you're making a mistake between 3 and 2, you're making a mistake on a third of the bigger measure. If that's the case, you shouldn't even make a measure of a kav. We said a measure of a chazi tarkav, which is 1.5 kavim. So why do we have the same problem? That 1.5 kavim and 1 kav is only a difference of a third. Half a kav is the difference between them. That's 1/3 of 1.5 kavim. Ella, so the Gemara says no. The problem kabayim of making, our original question was, why don't we make 2 kavim? The problem is not because of the tarkav which is above it. The problem is hainu time b'doleyav. Also the chlufi b'chatzi tarkav. It's because of the half of tarkav which is below it. Meaning chatz of tarkav is 1.5, and we're saying we should do 2 kavim, so that's the difference of a quarter. That means a quarter is less than a third. So that we're worried. I'm only worried about a difference of a quarter, which is a smaller difference, but we're not worried about a third. We see that you do make a mistake. A person can confuse a quarter, and therefore Chacham will not misaken a standard measure that is within 1/4 of the next one. Ihachi chatzi taimen. We're going to go to the smallest measure of a dry measure. So it's a chatzi taimen. A taimen is an eighth. Chatzi taimen is half of an eighth, which is a 16th. But ochla, and ochla we said was 1/5 of a quarter of a kav. 1/5 of a quarter of a kav, right? You take a quarter of a kav, you divide it by a fifth. That's a 20th. Basically, it's when you want to times one fraction, you just times the denominator. So you times 1/4 by 1/5, that gets 1/20th. So you shouldn't yachi chati toimev achaloyav. It's 1/16 and 1/20th. That's less than a quarter, or is it 1/20th? Well, that's 1/5, which is an even smaller difference. We'll see. You're in the trust me phase.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, I'm good. Meanwhile.
Yeah. So the difference between ochla and a time, and one is 1/16 of a kav, one is 1/20th of a kav. The difference between them is only 1/5, and we're saying even a quarter the chacham would not masaken to have 2 separate measures. Amar Papa meets katanas b'kiyibu inchi. No, the difference is small measures. It's like once you move into the teaspoons, that people can be careful even on smaller gradations. It's such a small amount, they're careful with it.
So 1/4 they're not bucky, but 1/5 they are.
They're not bucky in a 1/4 on large measures.
But in small.
Well, on small, even 1/5, maybe even 1/10, they could be bucky in a small measure.
Got it.
Frek the Gemara, Shlishas ahin, Revius ahin, Loyli Avid. How can you do a third of a hin and a fourth of a hin? There again, that's less than a quarter. We said anything that's a quarter, people can make a mistake on. So Gemara even have a migdash legazu b'hurabanim. And if we all remember from the parsha, right? It says it's when we say the nesachim of yayin, we say we say there's revius ahin and shlish ahin depending on which carbon you bring. So therefore, the chacham were not geyser on it. Since in the mikdash they measured out these measurements, so therefore it also is a regular measurement that people use in their business. Instead of making a shlishas ahin and a revius ahin, measuring it out as its own kli, why don't we just do it? Divide up how many lugin there are in each. Right, there are 12. I think there are 12 lugin in a hin. So if you're doing shlishas ahin that's a third of a hin, that's 4 lugim. And if you're doing revius a hin, a quarter, that's 3. So just do 3 lugin and 4 lugin, meaning individual single lugin, and do it 3 times or 4 times. So the word Kahanim is using here. We're not worried about it because Kahanim are going to be careful. They're not going to make a mistake. Nuta, Amar Shmuel. We don't add, meaning the way the Rashbam explains, what this means is a town cannot decide we're changing our midah. Our current pound has 16 ounces. From now on, it's going to have 30 ounces. They could do it, but they can't change it by more than a sixth. And not a currency changing its value by more than a sixth. And someone who profits should not have a profit of more than a sixth, and that's the general rule of Oino. So, I mean, the Rashbam says this is talking about a specific case, it's a specific type of Oino, and something that people use all the time. It's that kind of that the Chamo Misakin, that you shouldn't add a markup, even though a wholesaler is allowed to do a markup, and it's not considered Oino, but on staples, we restrict it to only being a sixth. So we go through these things. That which we said, that a town cannot increase the size of its measures by more than a sixth. My time. What's the reason? If you'll say this is going to cause the cycle of inflation to start, right? If one day and this is 100%, I think it's 100% factual, like it makes sense to me. If one day a pound is 16 ounces, and then the next day a pound contains 30 ounces, the people at the grocery store, they're going to have to raise their prices to accommodate the new pounds, but they're not going to just do it exactly in proportion. Once they start increasing the prices, now is the time we could increase the prices even more. By doing this, it's going to cause inflation. So we should say even less than a shtus. There's no reason why a shtus is the limit, that if you allow them to change. Once they're changing the measures, it's going to give an opportunity for the merchants to raise prices. So what's the reason? Because somebody's going to come from a different town, and he's gonna sell something. He's not going to know that they changed the midas, so he's going to sell an old mida. He's going to sell with the new mida. He's not going to realize that they're measuring with the new mida, and he's going to charge the old price. So if you limit it to a sixth, in general, the rule of Ainoah is anything less than a sixth you ignore. If it's exactly a sixth, then the mekach, the deal stands, but you have to refund the overcharge or the undercharge. And more than a sixth is a bittul mekach. So in order that people who are not aware of the change in the weights or in the measures should not enter into a lot of transactions that have to be unwound, we limit it to only a sixth, and that way it won't have to be unwound. Rava says this whole din that we say that there's a din of Oinah, that's only with the amount that you charge is incorrect. But if the amount that was sold is incorrect, that's not Oinah. That's always a mekach. That's a bittul mekach. It's a mekach twice, because you didn't sell what you thought you were selling. It's only on the cash side, the payment side, that you can have Oinah. But if it's on what you're producing, what you're providing, that's going to always be a bittul mekach, because that's not what the deal was. So it can't be, in this case, obviously, the person who sold it didn't realize that he was selling more than he thought. Elo deloy lahavi pseidi letager. Gemara says the problem is it's a different problem. The reason is why you can't do more than a sixth. We don't want someone who's a peddler who comes into town and he sells something and he doesn't realize that the weights are different than what he's used to, and then he leaves and he never finds out. He's not going to be. It's true. It's a mekach tais, but the guy never finds out about it, and he just goes home and he realizes when he counts up his money, he realizes something went wrong. He didn't make money that month, but he doesn't know why. Gemara. So what do you think? It's okay as long as it's less than a sixth, because the usual markup, like we said before, the markup that's allowed to a seller is up to a sixth. So we say if we limit to a sixth, then it's all coming out of his profits. So this peddler, even though it was a mekach tais and he never found out, but at least he didn't lose money. He just didn't make any money. So what is it? So what do you think? A peddler doesn't need to make profit? Does he just want to be able to say, hand out a business card saying, I'm a peddler, and that's all he needs? He obviously has a lot of expenses. He's schlepping around, and then at the end of the month, if he didn't make any money, he's not interested in being called a peddler. He's interested in making money. And if you take away all of his profit, he's definitely not going to have what to live on. So how could it be even less than a sixth? Shmuel has a pasuk to support this rule that you can't change the amounts by more than a sixth. The darshans. Vashekel esrim gera. The shekel is 20 gera. Esrim shkolim chamisha v'esrim shkolim asar v'chamisha shekel. The hamana yelecha. It's saying about how much the money is, and the Torah counts out how much a money is by saying it was 25 shkolim. I'm sorry, 20 shkolim plus 25 shkolim plus 15 shkolim. And there's a whole explanation of why it was said in this way instead of just saying a total of 60 shkolim. But if you add it up, it's 60 shkolim. A shekel has 4 dinas. So the Gemara continues. Mana masan v'arbasan happen. So that the pasuk was telling you how much a mana is, and the mana equaled 60 shekel. Since each shekel is 4 dinar, so the mana had 240 dinar. El shmamina tlas. We learned from this 3 things. Shmamina mana shel kaddish kafel haya. We know that a mana is 100 dinar. And all of a sudden, the Torah is describing a mana that has 60 shkalim, which a normal mana has 25 shkalim in it, which equals up to 100 dinar. And all of a sudden, the Torah says the mana in the Mikdash, in the Mishkan, was 60 shkalim, which equals 240. So first of all, you see that the mana in the Mikdash was more than double the normal mana, because it was 240 as opposed to 100 dinar. And on top of it being double, it was a shekel. They added on to the mana an extra. The Torah added on, instead of it being double, just 200 dinar, it added on an extra 60, so it went to 260 dinar. So 260 over 200 is a shtus. They mesif in yosem shtus. The Torah added on an extra 60, which is a 6. So this is the source where Shmuel sees that you could be meisif a midah of up to a 6. We also see that the way they calculate the shtus is you look at what is 1/6 of, doesn't seem right, 240, not 260. So what is 1/6 of 240 is 60. So that's what you're allowed to add on a shtus. Right, I'm sorry, we changed from 25 to 30 shekel. That's where it's from. It's not really from the dinar, it's from the shkolim. The shkolim went from 25 to 30. And then they doubled that to 60. So you see that but looking at it, of changing it from 25 to 30, that's 5 is 1/6 of 30. So you're seeing that you're looking at the larger number, what you're going to make it into, and you say 1/6 of that is the maximum that you could increase it. Papa Bar Shmuel talking Kaila Bar Tilsa Kapizi. He was masakin a measure that was called a Kaila, which had 3 Kapizi, which I think was 9 lugin. Amrale, Amar Shmuel Midas Yosem Ishtos. How could you make this new midah, which was much larger than the previous midah? Amlu, Ano Kaila Chadat Takinim. Said, no, it's not a problem. I didn't increase the size of a previous measure. I was masakin a new measure. This measure is it's not a problem to add on to it. It's not a problem if it's more than the previous measure. It's not going to get mixed up with the other measures because it's a new measure. Shadul Pumpadusa like Kiblua and Pumpadusa, they didn't allow it. Shadul Nuna, but Kiblua, they allowed it. For Kole Rus Papa, they called it the coin, the midah of Papa. Tanarabba, Oitre Paris, Umalve Beribis, those who store Paris in order to drive up the prices at the time of harvesting. That's when prices are usually low. And he says, instead of selling them now for low, I'm going to wait for later on when nobody has anything. So the prices will go up. Umalve beribis, people who lend with ribis. Umaktine efa, people who make the sizes of their measurements smaller, so when they sell, they'll be selling less. Mafkie sha'arim, and people who pump and dump, they cause the prices of staples to rise. Aleina kasav aymer, Lamar Masai, the Rebbe says, Masai Yavar Achodesh, when will the month end? When Ashbir Shever and the produce will become available, by Shabbos, and the Shabbos will come, Niftacha, meaning the Shvius, Niftacha Bar, and they're going to open up the storehouses, Lahakten Efa, to reduce the size of the Efa, Lahagdel Shekel, and to make the shekel more. What is lahagdil shekel? I forgot what that one is. How shekel the hainu malva beribish and magdil shekel. Yeah, they're magdil. They're malva beribis. The la'avos ma'oznai mirma. They use false weights. So these are all referring to the different. This pasuk, all these things that we refer to are the oitzrim, the people who refuse to, they put aside their produce in order to make the prices go up. That's what the first part of the pasuk is talking about. Lahakdan Efa is to reduce the size of measures. Lahagdil Shekel is Malve Ribis. Lahavis Moznai Mirma is what the Brisa said. Those are the people who falsify the measures. Uksiv Nishba Hashem Begoin Yaakov, the Bereshit makes a shvua. Im eshkach lenetzach chol maseim. I'm never going to forget these evil deeds. Oitre Paris. So what the first one that said in the pasuk was, I'm sorry, the first thing that said in the Brisa was Oitre Paris going man. Who is that like? I'm Rabbi Yechon going Shapsi Oitre Paris. Who's someone, a famous Shapsi, a bad guy who used to hoard his Paris and cause the price to go up. Avua the Shmuel. And Avua the Shmuel and Shmuel, they were trying to counteract the effects of these Oitre Paris that caused the prices to go up. Mazman Lulaperi, Ketara Charpa, Ketara Charpa. He would sell at the time of the harvest, he would sell his Paris at that low price in order that there would no shortage would occur. He would try to head off a shortage at the beginning. Shmuel Bray, Mashi Leperi, he would not sell his Paris at that time. He would sell them later at the time when it usually was cheap. I'm sorry, when the prices had gone up because people didn't have their Paris anymore. After the harvest, he would sell it at the cheaper price. It's better what the father does than the son. The father who sells it at the beginning when it's cheaper, at the cheap price, than the son who sells it at the cheap price later when it's expensive. My timer, tar de ravach. Because by Abu de Shmuel selling it at the cheap price, he causes it that there never becomes a shortage and doesn't cause the prices to rise in the first place. But Shmuel is trying to undo. It's like the the Federal Reserve. They always have to overcompensate. Once the inflation comes, they got to raise interest rates all the way up in order to. It's much harder to bring something down once it went up. So Abu de Shmuel tried to stop the prices from going up in the first place. And Shmuel was fighting after the prices were risen by selling at a cheaper price, which is a harder thing to do. Amarav, Oysa Adam is Kavai Oytzer. A person can keep his own, what he needs for his own house to use, that he can store. A person is not allowed to keep out of the market the things that people need for their lives, like wine and oil and flour. But the spices like pepper and cumin, mutter. Those are mutter. That's all by someone who buys from the marketplace. But you can't keep for yourself that which you need for your own household. In Eretz Yisrael, you have to observe Shemitah. A person can store for 3 years, even which is obviously normally you can only store for 1 year for your own use, but in Eretz Yisrael you can do 3 years. Why? You have 3 years that you're going to be affected. You're not going to be able to get from Shviya, so you have to store for those 3 years. If it's a year of famine, I feel kav charuvin lo yatsa. If it's a year of famine, you shouldn't set aside even one kav of charuvin, which is the cheapest thing. You can't hold on to, because that's going to cause. If you make even the smallest amount, which normally you could keep for yourself, if you're going to store anything, even a small amount, it's going to cause problems. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Let's just do one more line. He said his shamish. He instructed his shamish to say for him for the 3 years before Shvius. Okay, we'll stop over here.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
Wasn't so bad, I think. At least
No.
it wasn't so bad.